In World War II, anytime a soldier opened up a meal pack, there was a ration D bar in there that was specially formulated that it wouldn't melt and it wouldn't be damaged in the incredible heat. And it was a big energy bar, and it was something they could have and they could eat. And it was that little taste of home for those vets.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I am doing sweet. How are you?
I am fan-sweet-tastic.
Or fantastically sweet.
Or fantastically sweet. That's it. That's probably better. Better. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Do you have a sweet tooth?
I do for certain sweets.
Okay, like, what's your favorite?
Anything under the Hershey umbrella, I would say. Love a good Hershey bar.
Yeah, well played. Now, Hershey bar, just the traditional or with almonds? Like, we're getting specific.
We are getting specific, and here's where, I'll come out and say I'm like the most boring person you'll ever meet. Like, I drink my coffee black, I want just cheese on my pizza, and I just want the classic Hershey bar.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm a very simple
with that.
Yeah.
Although I did learn today from our interview that you can create a Reese's peanut butter cup, which is one of my favorites, with more Reese's peanut butter cups inside.
Yes. I'd probably just go and just get a regular. I'll just get the pound of Reese's.
Well, that's more for me. So today we had the absolute pleasure to talk to Steve Balliet, who's the senior manager of Hershey's U.S.-owned retail, working for the Hershey Company. And he talks to us all about, first of all, how the Hershey Company and Hershey Entertainment is different. Those are two different companies, but also the purpose that both of them serve. It's really a wonderful story.
I learned a lot from it. I mean, I know, a little bit of the background with Milton Hershey and building the factory and then building kind of the park as a recreation area for the employees and the family of the employees. I did not know the level of depth that Steve took us in. So amongst many things, this is an amazing history lesson that we get today.
Absolutely. So if, by the way, when you're listening to this episode, if you are hungry at all, you will be more hungry after we talk about all the different Hershey products.
Yeah. And like, if you're listening at the gym, just forget about it. Just leave. It's just, too ironic. Yeah.
Exactly.
We get to talk a little bit about manufacturing too, because at Hershey's Chocolate World, they've got the tour, which is a dark ride, which is more than 50 years old, opened in 1973, and is basically the factory tour in a ride. And you get to see how Hershey's candies are made from the bean to the bar.
And he said that a number of different times, from the bean to the bar. I love that phrase. There's also this storytelling element of what he talks about. And, we hear people talk about that a lot in very, very different ways. Honestly, not the one I would have thought of when you think of Hershey's, but there are a lot of stories to tell. And the way that they can immerse their guests, both from the chocolate world perspective and, from the park experience and everything that they get to do. You hear Steve talk a lot about how it is really all about the experience and coming together with all the different entities that are under the Hershey's umbrella.
And not to get meta, but the stories that Steve tells about storytelling are just inspiring and just so fascinating to listen to and to learn from. Steve's also passionate about leadership. He began his career at Dorney Park and was there for several years as a food and beverage leader, and then moved to Hershey not long after that. And he talks about transformational leadership, talks about servant leadership, and we get to dive into his leadership philosophy.
which is really cool. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about this conversation is how he weaved in, like you said, so many of those stories as he was talking about storytelling. And there are a couple that, at least one that I remember that really kind of pulls on your heartstrings. So I'm excited for people to hear that one.
Yes, yes. So before we pull back the wrapper on this and get to the interview, Matt, you have to answer your own question. Do you have a sweet tooth?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, when he talked about the Reese's peanut butter cup that you could put more Reese's peanut butter cups in, that's all I need.
I think you're going to be there tomorrow. I know you're going there this summer. I think you're like, sorry guys, can't wait.
I gotta go. I gotta go. So yes,
But
we should go ahead.
before we go, we should unwrap this sweet episode and get to this interview with Steve Balliet. Hey, Steve, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We are so excited to chat with you today. How are you?
Thanks, Josh. Really happy to be here. Doing fantastic and really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you and Matt today.
Wonderful. So to get this kicked off, tell us a little bit about yourself, and would love to learn about the background of your career.
Yeah, sure. So, my current role is I am the senior manager of U.S. retail for the Hershey Company. So I run our flagship businesses, our Hershey's Chocolate World here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, as well as our flagship metropolitan store in New York City in Times Square. So I've been doing this work and been working for the Hershey Company for about 20 years. But before that, really the roots of my career were in the theme park side of the business. I started with Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom, and as what was probably then a food and beverage manager at that point in time, and was a seasonal supervisor, seasonal worker at Dorney Park. Got promoted up, took a full-time job at Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom after I graduated from Penn State with a degree in food science, and just had fallen in love with the theme park industry. I think you guys know the story. It's a common story, and really just had this great opportunity at Dorney Park working with a guy with Lenny Freund. Still in the business today. He runs Freund's Family Foods, and Lenny was just a great mentor to me and helping me to begin to understand the theme park business, how to run a P&L, and it just kind of it sucked me into the business, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the leadership piece of it, and stayed with Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom. They were privately owned when I first started working for them. They ended up being purchased by Cedar Fair. While I was there, I worked for Cedar Fair for a couple of years at Dorney Park, and then was offered a role as the food and beverage manager at Hershey Park here in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And it was at that point I came to Hershey and started my career here with Hershey's. Got promoted to director of food and beverage there, and was really enjoying my time there. And then had the opportunity to kind of move across the street from Hershey Entertainment Resorts to the Hershey Chocolate Company, and to be a food and beverage leader here at Hershey's Chocolate World, and to expand what we were thinking of as entertainment at that point in time, to really create fun and engaging eating experiences and dining experiences within Chocolate World, and then just evolve my role through operations, and then more onto the business side, and then into a larger business leadership role. So it's been quite a road. But I'm certainly proud of the work I've done, and really have a lot of fun things to talk about, because I've been involved in a lot of really fun projects here over the year and through my career, and happy to share some of my learnings and some of the things I've been involved in.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to get into all of that. I can already tell this episode is going to make me hungry because you've got the Hershey bars behind you, and I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. But I actually want to go back to some of your experiences, early on in your career. Those first couple of years at Dorney, what are some of the things that you learned back then that you are maybe still even using today?
Yeah, it's an easy question for me to answer, because it's something that's resonated with me for me throughout my entire career. And frankly, I'm no surprise, I met my wife, Michelle, at Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom, and we talk about this all the time. And that is Harris Weinstein, who was the owner of Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom at the time. He was part of the Weinstein and Plar family that had owned the park. He was always out and about in the park. He was a continuous presence in the park. And Harris knew everybody that worked there. And he always took the time to talk to everybody that worked there. Whether you were a sweeper, whether you were a janitor, whether you were a vice president, he took the time to talk to everybody and get to know them. And he was also the guy that was never afraid to bend over and pick up the trash. If there was trash on the ground, Harris was going to be the guy that was out there, either with a grappler or bending over to pick it up. And it's something that really stuck with me, that you're never too big to pick up the trash. And when you've got something to learn from your team members, no matter what level you're at in the organization, and you need to take the time to stop, talk to them, listen to what they have to say, and give them a chance to tell you what's going on in their business, because it can be really eye-opening when you really start to get that information. So I think that has just resonated with me for so long.
That's really fascinating. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a great statement. You're never too big to pick up the trash. I mean, that's so important and just so impactful, and applies to everyone who's listening to this here. As we kind of now tailor that into your role today with the Hershey Company and Hershey's U.S. owned retail, I'm wondering if you could walk us through. You were sharing a little bit before we started recording, but I imagine there's a number of people out there who don't know that Hershey and Hershey Park and Hershey Entertainment and the Hershey Company are separate organizations, but the way that they operate together is very well integrated. Can you talk a little bit about what the difference is, or how you actually move from one company to another, but still kind of within the same family?
Yeah, sure. So, it was first explained to me in a very rudimentary way that when you think of Hershey's, you think about fun, you think about chocolate, and you think about kids. And in that way, those are the three main entities that exist here in Hershey. The fun is Hershey Park, Hershey Entertainment, if you will. The entities that Hershey Entertainment runs are the lodge, the hotel, the campground, and obviously Hershey Park. You get to the chocolate side of the business. That's where I currently reside, where we are the snacking company that makes, millions and millions of pieces of candy every day right here in Hershey, PA, to be sent all around the globe. And then the final piece of that puzzle is the kids, and that's the Milton Hershey School. The Milton Hershey School was founded by Milton Hershey back in the 1920s as a school for orphan boys, and continues to exist to this day, serving thousands of underprivileged kids from all around the country, and giving them this incredible boost to their life, where it's a boarding school. They take them from kindergarten through 12th grade, pay for all their needs, give them an education, let them live on site. They live here on campus with house parents and groups of kids their own age, 10 to 12 in the same house. And they get this amazing education, and they get this amazing opportunity that gets funded through the work that the Chocolate Company and Hershey Entertainment and Resorts have the opportunity to provide proceeds to, and to make sure that the school continues in perpetuity. And that was really kind of the brilliance of what Milton Hershey set up in his deed of trust, that those two companies were going to fund the school in perpetuity and to keep it going so that he could continue to make that impact on kids all across the country long after he was gone. And the other thing that was incredibly important to Milton Hershey at that time was that the quality of his products, the quality of the Hershey idea, was to be the highest level of excellence, whether you were tasting a chocolate bar that you bought across the country, or whether you were visiting Hershey, Pennsylvania, and you're in one of our venues here in Hershey. That quality was always to be at the highest level, and it was the highest ideal, and it was something that was paramount to him. So to this day, even though we are two very separate companies, separate organizational structures, we work closely together to provide a seamless guest experience. I would imagine that most of the people listening to this podcast are probably, who had been here, probably had no idea that they were two separate companies. And that's really a testament to the work that gets done to make sure that the experience is seamless for all of our guests.
Steve, can you talk about what it means maybe from your perspective or even from the employee's perspective, to know that what they're doing, whether they're, flipping a burger or, a VP or something, picking up trash, whatever they're doing, that they are really contributing to the future success of these young people that are at the school.
What a reason to get out of bed in the morning, right? What a reason to get out of bed and go to work and to be able to tell a story to the millions of guests that come through our door every year and they have a chance to talk to, and to be able to say, hey, if you get a chance while you're here, go over to Founders Hall where we've got our monument to Milton Hershey and you can learn a little bit about the school, or take the Hershey trolley tour, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And a lot of the drivers for the Hershey trolley are former house parents. So they speak from a very first person experience on how they've interacted with the kids and how it's impacted their lives, or maybe they've gone to the school themselves, and they'll tell you right from their heart that without that opportunity, they don't know where they might be today. And so we hear it, we live it every day. And I will tell you, I go over to Founders Hall when I onboard new employees, and every time I go over there, I just get goosebumps when I think about how special this place truly is, because it really is, and it's a fantastic reason to get up to work in the morning.
I can't help but think how at the beginning of the pandemic, the word non-essential became part of our daily lives, right? And non-essential businesses and businesses like theme parks, right? And Hershey Park was considered by that standard to be non-essential. We took a stand against that. We kind of came up with this attractions are essential, motto. And
Sure.
Everything you just described just shows how attractions were providing entertainment or candy or chocolate, right? The way that they are able to support what extends beyond the gates of the theme park per se, and just have such an amazing impact, just shows that something like an attraction like a theme park should be absolutely so essential. So I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but that's just really what I think of there.
We could do an entirely separate podcast on all the work that was done here in Hershey during the pandemic to keep people working, keep jobs available, keep the destination going. I mean, it was a heroic effort, and it was fantastic, but probably a topic for another day.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things we're curious about is the tagline on your LinkedIn profile: bringing brands to life through immersive storytelling. Would love it if you can share, if you could help us unpack that tagline.
Yeah, sure. So, when we talk about immersive storytelling, the first thing that probably comes to mind for folks who are listening to this podcast are things like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or Harry Potter experience at Universal Studios. Those deeply immersive pieces of story where you become the participant in the story. You're there in person, you're seeing it, you're experiencing it as if you're the wizard with the wand in your hand. And man, have they done an amazing job of being able to put you into that story and make you part of it. And we've believed here at Hershey that we've got amazing stories to tell as well. And our stories are just a little bit different than the fictional stories that get told in the Disney and the Universals of the world. Our stories are rooted in reality and authenticity, and they're rooted in things like how we make chocolate at its very core. Willy Wonka wouldn't be on its third reboot if the idea of being in a chocolate factory and being a kid in the chocolate factory wasn't this incredibly compelling story idea. And we have the opportunity to bring that to life every day. But when you think about the stories that we get to tell here, we get to tell stories of manufacturing, of how we make our candy from the bean to the bar. We can take deep dives into that manufacturing process and talk about how candy changes its form and function as we deposit chocolate to make a kiss, or we mold certain kisses to make filled kisses. We can talk about the sweet flavors and salty flavors, and the brilliant fruity flavors in the Jolly Rancher candy, and the flaky coconut that goes into an Almond Joy. All of those things are just fantastic stories that we get to bring to life here, and our guests come to experience in really new and unique ways. some of the other stories, that we love to tell, the Milton Hershey School story, obviously something that's just rooted in the reality and authenticity of what we do. But then we get to things like, I love to tell this story because it's just so amazing. It was so genuine. You may or may not know that during World War II and probably during every wartime commitment that the United States has had, that the Hershey Company has made a candy bar that has gone into the MRE packs of soldiers. So, in World War II, anytime a soldier opened up a meal pack, there was a ration D bar in there that was specially formulated that it wouldn't melt and it wouldn't be damaged in the incredible heat. And it was a big energy bar, and it was something they could have and they could eat. And it was that little taste of home for those vets. And I was, several years ago, we had an animated character experience in our lobby where that animated character was puppeted by a Jim Henson digital puppetry rig, and the animated character could interact with guests who were in the lobby, similar to Turtle Talk with Crush would be a reasonable analog. And our Hershey product character would be out there in the lobby and talking to guests as they were walking by. And it was a February day, and the lobby was pretty empty. And I was walking through, and there was a World War II vet in a wheelchair, and he was being pushed around by his daughter. And he had stopped to talk to that animated Hershey bar and tell him the story of how every single MRE that he opened up in his time in the Army had that chocolate bar, and how he looked forward to that every day because it reminded it of home. And that when he had the opportunity, when he was in France, to give it to a small child who may not have had, a small enjoyment for a long period of time and put a smile on his face. I mean, and just to see that 90-year-old man talk to that animated character like it was his best friend, and he had this relationship and this connection with him because of that bar that he had connected with during his time in the Army. It's just one of those things. Again, it gives me goosebumps because it's just so real, and it just reminds us how big of an impact that even something as simple as a candy bar can have on people's lives.
Well, Josh, I don't know about you in Chicago, but it's getting dusty here in North Carolina, I have to say. But Steve, that was a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it really it shows how deep the impact of what we do can be. When you think about a candy bar, but put in that context of, nourishing the troops, I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. So thank you very much for sharing that story. I'd love to go back because you were talking about the trolleys, and it sounded like you wanted to go maybe a little deeper into that. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, when you come to Hershey's Chocolate World, everybody comes here for our famous Hershey's Chocolate World Tour ride, right? That's a 15-minute dark riding tour of how we make chocolate to the bean to the bar. And that's a free tour. And it has been free since we opened up in 1973. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. And that's, 90% of our guests come here to get on that ride and enjoy it and have that moment. And really, we've spent the last 20 years evolving our paid attractions here at Chocolate World. And one of the first paid attractions that we had was the Hershey Trolley Works. And the Hershey Trolley Works is a bus riding tour in a turn-of-the-century themed trolley with live actors on board that take you around the town and tell you a little bit of the story about Milton Hershey, his youth, growing up, his failures in business, his ventures with the Lancaster Commerce Company, his failures in Philadelphia, bringing that story to life as they're moving around the town of Hershey and taking you to special landmarks and destinations, including the homestead where Milton Hershey himself was born. You get to see the factories where we make our products. You get to see various buildings that the school operates. Catherine Hall, which sits as a huge monument on top of the hill overlooking Hershey itself, Founders Hall. But it's so fun because the actors bring it to life in a really fun way, and it is our highest NPS score attraction here at Chocolate World because it just so deeply engages our guests in the things that are really meaningful about our destination and shows them where those things happen within the destination. So it really is a special attraction if you get the opportunity to come to Hershey. Take the time to do it because it's worthwhile.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I would love it if we can also go a little deeper into the factory tour dark ride. I had the opportunity to visit Hershey last summer. I actually did not realize that the ride was 50 years old. It seems like there's been some continual technological updates and enhancements to it. So tell us a little bit about what is the factory tour dark ride for those who are unfamiliar.
Yeah, so again, going back to Milton Hershey, when he started producing chocolate here in Pennsylvania, one of the very first things that he did after he opened up that factory was he opened it up to tours. So when you came to Hershey, you could get a tour through the original factory, get a sample of chocolate as you're going through that factory, and see how Milton Hershey's quality products were being made day in and day out. And you took that tour. And it was right around 1970 when the factories were getting about 1 million people a year going through, and modern sanitation and modern safety standards really kind of said, you know what, this probably isn't the right thing to be doing anymore, but we need to create a venue where all of these people can come and see how we make chocolate and see how it gets done. So Hershey's Chocolate World opened up in 1973 with the Hershey's Chocolate Making Tour, a dark ride. The actual track itself was designed by Aerodynamics, and that track and that configuration and that ride mechanism has not changed a bit since we opened up in 1973, so 50 years old. But certainly the story being told in the dark ride itself has changed over the years. It's moved from a bit of a more analog, mannequin-driven experience to a little bit more digital, a little more projection map, and being able to bring that story to life of how we make chocolate from the bean to the bar, and to show them the quality and the love that Hershey puts into making the candy, because it truly is a labor of love for the folks in this town.
For sure. So, Steve, I know that you were the project lead, it sounds like, for the Build Your Own Candy Bar experience. So I'd love to kind of dive into that process and kind of where it came from and what that experience is like.
So, yeah, Create Your Own Candy Bar is really from my perspective, a really fascinating story to tell. And I will say that it is a project that has many people at the heart of it. I mean, if you think about it, the idea of being able to come to Hershey's and make your own Hershey bar is a pretty simple idea, at face value. The hard part comes when you think about what it really takes to do it. So there were a lot of people over the years that had the idea of what it would be, and it was really a core group of 4 or 5 of us that sat down in 2007 to kind of say, hey, what would it take to really bring this to life? How could we really make this happen? And we brought together a cross-functional collaborative team that included folks from our quality and regulatory compliance team. We had engineers from packaging, from process engineering to software and controls. We had a theme park thematic designer on board to talk about what the experience would look like for guests, to make sure that we could get the throughput that we wanted, and what would those touch points look like, and what was that guest experience. And so they were, leaning into the theme park and attraction side. And we got everybody in a room and said, oh, okay, how can we make this happen? And the fascinating part about this, from my perspective, and it was really an amazing learning for me, was that when especially when it comes to manufacturing food, there's a lot of sensitivity around food safety, and rightly so, around food safety, and making sure that the product that's coming off that line is as good as every other Hershey bar that comes off our line at any one of our factories. That's our quality standard, right? That's what we're all about. So as theme park and attraction folks, we start talking about, well, when you come up to this factory line, you need to be able to get your nose right up to where the chocolate's pouring on. They're like, no, you can't do that. You've got to be 6 feet back, and there needs to be 3 inches of glass. And we're like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to want to pay to do that. So there was this really collaborative process of working to understand their needs versus our needs, and how we were going to come together to solve for all of those issues and get to a place where our guests could be right there alongside their bar and literally walk down the line with it as it's being made, seeing their name flash up on the display screens as their toppings are being poured into their chocolate shell for it to be go through a curtain of chocolate and be enrobed just a couple minutes later. So it was really a collaborative process. It was a process of perseverance. You know, if you remember, 2008 was a pretty good sized depression. We put the project on the shelf for 2 years. We kind of said, you know what, we don't know if this is the right time to do this. Economic conditions aren't right, so we shelved the project. We didn't open until 2010, and then once we opened in 2010, and, you know, everything that we had done for this attraction was bespoke. Everything was custom, and even to the point where something as simple as, if this chocolate bar is going down the line, how do I know that the person at the end of this line is going to get their bar? And how do we guarantee that that happens for every single person? And up until that point, you know, there hadn't been a manufacturing solution that had really done that. And our packaging team worked night and day. They reached out, and finally they found somebody at a pharmaceutical company who was tracking medical hardware and came up with this idea that, hey, you know what, I think we can do this, and I think that we can do it pretty easily. And we struggled with it after we launched for about 6 months, and that was, you know, a really big guest service challenge, as you can imagine. But eventually we got it right, and now every single bar gets laser coated with your name and your unique ID, that when you get to the end of that line, you know that you're getting the bar that you designed, and it's specifically made for you. So it's been, it was really an incredible ride. I think the other thing to talk about with Create Your Own Candy Bar, just from an attraction perspective, and without getting really, you know, into a lot of specific, you know, financial numbers, you know, when theme parks launch new attractions, typically you'll see a spike the first year, and then the ridership and interest in that ride tends to kind of fade out over time. We have seen 12 years of ongoing revenue growth in Create Your Own Candy Bar, because it is such an iconic portion of what we do. I mean, it's our swim with the dolphins. You know, it really is. It is that moment that you come to Hershey for.
Mm.
You know, it's interesting the way you're describing it. It's kind of a peek behind the curtain. You know, when you go to the store and you buy the candy bar, you buy it. It's fully done. You don't get to see the manufacturing side of it. So this is manufacturing as an experience, right? It is the attraction side of it. Right.
Well, Josh, you've absolutely hit the nail right on the head. And, you know, when we were originally pitching the idea and talking about, you know, kind of attraction pricing strategies and, you know, some of the feedback is, well, why would anybody pay that much for a candy bar? Well, it's not about the candy bar. This is the only place anywhere that you can go inside on an authentic chocolate factory and make your own bar. Period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
And our guests absolutely love it.
I've got to imagine that a lot of them probably don't even eat it. Like they take it home almost as a souvenir, or show it to as many people as, you know, as they can. You know, it's got my name on, or at least get a picture with it. And it is not, you're not paying for the candy bar. You're paying for everything that leads up to it.
Exactly. But one of the things that our survey tells us is that the most important part of that process is when they get to design their own wrapper. Mm-hmm. So the wrapper gets to sit on the shelf, and hopefully they eat the chocolate.
That was where I was going.
Right. Yeah. Steve, I'd love to switch gears just for a little bit. You've got such a breadth of experience, just in terms of kind of your leadership philosophy and what you kind of mentioned it earlier when you talked about picking up trash and those type of things, but I'm curious what kind of things have developed over the years that have really sort of informed your leadership style.
Yeah, you know, I would say that you know, as with anybody, you know, who is in this industry, that's an ongoing journey, and it's something that I think about. I mean, literally almost every day when you think about your leadership interactions and you think about, you know, how you're coaching your people and how you're managing your people. It's something that I think about every day, because it's the environment that we work in changes so rapidly, and people's needs change so rapidly, and it's really been an interesting journey. from my perspective, I like to think of myself as, kind of a transformational leader. I take things and I take ideas from a strategy and marketing perspective that can have some complexity to them, and I simplify them down for my team so they've got really clear objectives. They've got really clear outcomes that they know what success looks like, and then we work together to build on those objectives. Servant leadership, it's part of my core. I believe that my day exists to make my team look good. And every day and every one-on-one with my team members is, let me know what you're working on. Let me know what your successes are. I need to get them in front of leadership to let them know the things that you're doing and to empower and enable more work and more great things from you so that you get the credit for it. So, if my team looks good, I'm going to be just fine, and that's something that I work on, really every day. And I think the other thing that's interesting about the attractions industry that becomes so much a part of our DNA is this idea. At least at Hershey's, we think of it as continuous improvement. Where every day something different is being tried. You're empowered to go out and do something new and take a chance and fail fast and fail quickly. And with those failures, I found that, and with that opportunity for failure, I found that you spend a lot of time now working on building confidence and helping people, move forward, and that helping them move past a failure and getting them to build up from it, as well as recognizing all the great successes that we have so that we can keep trying and keep building and keep learning from our mistakes. So, you have to spend as much time on the things that don't work as you do on the things that do work.
You mentioned transformational leadership, and I'm wondering if we could kind of deconstruct that a little bit more for somebody who might be listening, saying that is the kind of leader I want to be. What goes into being a transformational leader?
It is really about simplicity, as I mentioned before, right? You can't take your team anywhere unless they have a clear idea of where you want them to go. So taking complex ideas, making them simple, inspiring positive change, so that when they're out there working on their teams, that we sell chocolate. We sell chocolate, for Pete's sake. It's not brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. We should be having fun every day, and everything that we do should be about making our guests' experience just a little bit better than it was the day before, and to empower and encourage them to transform the things that are within their boundaries of control, and to let them work on it and keep it moving forward. I think that's what transformational leadership is: to be able to shape the organization and let the team have the power to shape what their workplace looks like and the things that they work on.
That's awesome. And I think, I'm not a medical professional, but if chocolate could cure cancer, I think you'd be really onto something with that. But Steve, I'm also curious, as you talk about really empowering your team, I'm sure there's a lot of young professionals that you've worked with that have, come up through the ranks, and maybe they've moved on to other things or whatever the case may be. What advice do you have for people that may be, pursuing a career in the industry?
And it goes back a little bit to what I was mentioning earlier, and that is, understand that the skill sets that you develop in this industry are going to hyper prepare you for anything that you will do elsewhere in the world. You will never deal with the volatility, the uncertainty, the rapid change, the things that you've got to deal with in this business that we deal with on an everyday basis, that make people out in general business world, it makes their heads spin. And people in this business, they just do it as part of their core. And it's just amazing to me. And they take it for granted. They solve challenging guest interactions, right? They see the most challenging of guest interactions that you can come across, and they handle it and they solve it and they do it deftly and they do it, easily. Those are the skill sets that just take you from what you're doing and can be applied to anything else anywhere, that you're doing. I call it, learning agility, taking that skill set that you have and what you know and being able to apply that skill set into a different task, a different job, or a different role. Similar concept, same idea. You agilely move your learning over. The other thing that we do, I think that is really applicable is this idea, again, we give it fancy terms like minimum viable product, right? We start things really small in the attractions industry. We test them small and then we build them and they grow and you nurture them until you get a big business hit. And you do that through this kind of do, learn, optimize process. It's part of the DNA in this industry. And we don't give ourselves enough credit for it, candidly, because we do it so well.
Hmm.
So do, learn, optimize. So that, I think that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier, is kind of the continuous improvement and the fail fast and sort of learn from that and do it. Is this kind of, if I were to sort of interpret this of, you've got the task, do the task the way you believe it's to be done, and then view the results immediately and implement as rapid of a feedback loop to say, okay, this is going well, this could be improved, and then really put that on repeat so that the optimization is sort of the rinse and repeat, until it continues to grow. And if there's a plateau, there's a plateau. Otherwise, it keeps growing.
And I'll give you a really quick example, and because I will get one more plug in, one more unabashed plug for one of our really, really, amazing food and beverage experiences here at Hershey's Chocolate World, and it's called Reese's Stuff Your Cup. And Reese's Stuff Your Cup is this idea that you can create your own 1 pound Reese that's made with authentic cup butter that's taken from our Reese's plant right down the road. And you get to mix into that cup butter whatever you want. You can put in brownie pieces. You can put in Reese's pieces. You can put in more Reese's peanut butter cups. You can put in sprinkles. And we will mix that together and we will make you a 1 pound Reese that is custom made for you. Think of it, Cold Stone Creamery for Reese's peanut butter cups. We started that idea truthfully with little more than a marble slab, a pail of some peanut butter, and a couple of containers, and tested it with our guests. And very quickly, we knew that we had something really, really special. And now we know that, hey, this has some energy, this has some inertia. Let's make some investment in this. Let's create the design around this. Let's really bring this thing to life in a way that makes sense. And today it exists in a format that that is just not fully polished. We're still doing work on the optimized part of it, and still learning as we go. So yeah, it is exactly part of our continuous improvement cycle. And get to market quick, learn quick, and make changes, and just wash, rinse, and repeat.
So you're saying I can get a Reese's cup with Reese's cup inside?
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh I've even got my Reese's cup socks on today. So to give you an indication
of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you, since we've been talking about some of the products, do you have a favorite Hershey's product?
I am an absolute payday freak. I love peanuts and I love nougat and caramel. So, one of the great things about working at Hershey's Chocolate World is that our conference rooms have bowls of candy in them and they get refreshed every day. And my team kind of knows that if Steve's in a meeting, he's going to want the payday. So they'll generally pick it out for me and put it on the table for me and save it for me, because payday is my jam.
Awesome.
Very nice. So tying in with this do, learn, optimize strategy and everything you said of this Reese's experience here, what do you see as being the future of themed or immersive retail? I know a little bit of a segue into that question right there. If you were to look 5 years, 10 years down the road, and what would you see?
This is a question that I put a lot of thought into, and I don't have a good answer. So, and if I had a really good answer, I'd probably be a really wealthy consultant. So, but what I will say is this, I think that what you see out on the street today with a lot of brick and mortar retail who struggle against competing in this omni-channel world, in a world where so many things can be brought online, that there has to be a way for some of these brands to tell their amazing stories in a way that really connects the folks who come through their doors to understand more about their brands, to understand the things that are important to them, and why they need to purchase it. And I know that sounds, that's a concept, it's a strategy, and really difficult to execute. But I think that what we've learned is that it doesn't take a lot to be able to tell the story. It doesn't take a lot to be able to tease the story and let guests take a deeper dive on their own time. Let them go to your website. Let them look a little bit deeper. Let them find other venues to get that information. So I think that storytelling will evolve from the theme park and attraction world into the broader retail space. I think you'll probably see more store-in-store concepts where brands bring their products to life in these small store-in-store concepts in really new and unique ways that give them the opportunity to tell their story. Exactly what that looks like, I can't say that I have a good vision about what that looks like, but I think that's where they're going.
That's really cool. And it's hard for probably anybody to think exactly what that's going to look like, but I appreciate your honesty. Not only that, but what kind of what you said in terms of the strategy. So, Steve, this has been a can I just say delicious conversation? Is that wrong? But super glad that you've been able to spend some time with us. I do have one last question, and whenever I email somebody from Hershey, I always say, "Oh, it's sweet," or it's sweet talking to you. Do you ever get tired of people calling your job sweet?
Of course not. It is what we do. It is part of our DNA here, and in that vein, I hope the two of you have a sweet day.
Steve, this has been a very sweet interview. So we really appreciate your time today and sharing these amazing stories and leadership lessons with us. If people want to learn more about the Hershey Company, or if they want to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Yeah, so a couple places. So Hershey'sChocolateWorld.com is the Hershey's Chocolate World website. Take a visit to that website. You can see everything you need to know about our locations. Not just here in the continental United States, but we also have locations in Singapore and Niagara Falls in Canada, Las Vegas. So we've got other partner locations. So if you get in town, stop by and visit those locations and learn about them at Hershey'sChocolateWorld.com. My email address, my first initial last name, Balliet @Hershey's.com. More than happy for anybody to reach out via email, and I will absolutely get back to you. If you have any questions or thoughts, would love to hear them.
Or if anybody wants to send you a payday, I'm sure you wouldn't turn that down.
Absolutely.
Steve, thank you again for your time. Like Josh has said, it's been sweet, it's been delicious, it's been wonderful. So thank you so much for being here today. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all Attraction Pros. Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.